Welcome back again to my continued series of talks on the common shortcomings of spiritual leaders. I've already addressed 6 of them, and today I'd like to address number 7, which is probably the most difficult and the most sensitive one to talk about, because that has to do with problems with sexuality generally, but problems with the opposite sex specifically. Now, this is a very private area, not often talked about, but it's important that we as spiritual leaders be cautioned and be aware of the temptations in this area and the challenge to walk with integrity and purity in this regard. In 1 John 3 verse 21 and 22 it says this, "Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, then we have confidence towards God, and whatever we ask we receive of Him, because we keep His commandments and do those things that are pleasing in His sight." Now, that's a powerful passage of Scripture. It has to do with confidence with God that comes from us walking with a clear conscience, and we receive answers to our prayers as a result, and we do those things that are pleasing to God. Now, misconduct or failure in the area of our sexuality is one of the areas that robs us the quickest of our confidence towards God. It robs us of confidence to look God in the eyes, to look other people in the eyes, and of course it's displeasing to God. Now, we as spiritual leaders can't be too careful to guard our hearts and to guard our minds in this sensitive area. Unfortunately, there are too many graphic illustrations and stories of leaders that have failed in this area and left a wake of devastation and destruction and hurt and bitterness and resentment. Now, when this happens with spiritual leaders, when they fail in this area, it brings incredible discredit to the character of God and damages the reputation of the Church of Jesus Christ. In 1 Corinthians 10 verse 12 it says, "So if you think that you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall." We are who are standing, be careful that we don't fall. We need to be aware of the tactics and the temptations of the enemy. We need to be intentional to build safeguards in the way we conduct ourselves and the way we handle ourselves, and be aware and careful in this area. Now, this talk can't be a comprehensive talk on the biblical basis of sexuality. That would be a much longer discussion. Maybe that's for another time. But today I'd like to at least bring caution to spiritual leaders to be careful in this area and not to fail in this area of sexuality. Let's be quite clear. The Bible extols the beauty of the God-given gift of sexual relationships within the confines of a covenant relationship of marriage. In Hebrews 13 verse 4 it says, "Marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled." Now, the word for bed there is the word koitia, which specifically refers to the sexual act, and the context there is within marriage. Now, sex is a God-given, beautiful gift. It's not something ugly, it's something pure, it's something holy, it's something that God has created. We've made it something ugly by taking it outside the confines of marriage. Now, sex is like a fire. That's the same fire that can cook your food, that can warm your home, that can generate electricity, that can be productive and used for good. That same fire, when burning outside of control, can burn down a home and even burn down a city and leave in its wake incredible devastation and destruction. It's important to note there's no such thing as safe sex outside the confines of marriage. The Bible is very clear, and there's many words that warn against sexual activity outside of marriage, and not only sexual activity that involves other people. You can be involved in sexual misconduct or failure without even engaging someone else. Now, I said there are many words that would explain the different aspects of sexual sin, and I'd just like to, for the context of this, the failure in this area, I'd just like to mention 3 of them. Number 1 is the word lasciviousness, which is the word that's used in the King James Version, a big word. As a teenager, I used to read these words and I had no idea that they had anything to do with sex. But the word lasciviousness, some modern translations use the word sensuality. Now that word simply means this: it's a hard choice to stir up sexual desires outside of God's limits. Or another way of putting it, it's to willingly and willfully concentrate on something or someone to arouse yourself sexually. That it resides in the will. You choose to do something or concentrate on something to arouse yourself sexually. No one can make you sensual. You choose to be sensual. It starts with your will. It starts with the choice. Now, pornography is one of those issues where you choose to engage in some kind of activity to see illicit or pornographic material. Now, often that's done just out of curiosity, but it's a dangerous slope to get onto. Don't go there. The second sin that's mentioned, or the second category of sexual sin, is the word concupiscence, which again is another big King James word, but that simply is translated lust. Now, lust is when you are hooked or addicted to sex. Now, you can't become lustful without first being sensual. When you've misused your will often enough, your will becomes so weakened that you become addicted to, you become in bondage to that activity, and that then you are lustful, you're addicted to it. That's all you're thinking, that's in your mind all the time, and then the enemy has a hold of you. So be careful of sensual activity, because that can lead to the bondage of lust. Now, in these two cases, you can be involved in sexual failure without even engaging someone else. The third category that I want to warn against is the word defraud. Now, you thought defraud had to do with money, printing your own money. But in the sexual or relational context, defraud simply means this: it's to stir up emotional or sexual desires in someone else that you cannot righteously satisfy. For both men and females, we need to be very careful that we don't defraud one another or allow situations to cause us to be defrauded. Now, these are just some cautions for us to be aware of, and to put some roadblocks in place the way we conduct ourselves when it comes to our sexual thoughts and our sexual relationship. May the fear of God be upon us, so that we can guard our hearts in this area, so that we can walk with a clear conscience and do those things that are pleasing to God. Here are a few questions for you to consider. Number 1, as a spiritual leader, are you living with a clear conscience sexually? In other words, above reproach in all your thoughts and conduct. Number 2, do you have someone that you can be open with and accountable to if you are facing temptations in this area? Number 3, if you are single, do you have roadblocks in place to protect yourself in this area? Number 4, if you are married, do you and your spouse have agreed boundaries in place to protect you both from emotional abuse and sexual compromise? God bless you.